Hello and welcome. My name is Luke Herbert. I'm the Director of Pharmacy at KSB Hospital. And with me today is Dr. Fadi Mustapha. Dr. Mustapha is board certified gastroenterologist with a practice here at KSB and has been part of the leadership team of the KSB medical staff for several years and is currently president of medical staff. Welcome, Dr. Mustapha.
Thank you, Luke.
Thank you for being here with me today.
My pleasure.
And our goal here today is to share some information about COVID vaccines and to help people decide, about vaccination. We know that vaccine hesitancy is quite common right now. There was a lot of speculative information about a year ago, and at this point in time, we're at a much better place with information, and in particular around vaccines. We have a lot more evidence-based, reliable information. So, Dr. Mustapha, what can you share with folks who are looking to, for confidence, trust information about vaccines and wondering where they should get information about vaccines?
Sure. Thank you, Luke, again for giving me this opportunity to speak about this important public health issue. We at KSB would like our patients and community to make the right decisions regarding COVID-19 vaccination after reviewing the available data. We, the healthcare professionals at KSB, are happy to answer any questions, any of their concerns. The COVID-19 vaccines currently approved in the US are both safe and effective. Close to about 1 billion vaccines have been administered worldwide. We initially had reliable data from large studies to support the vaccine's safety and efficacy. And now we have real life data from hundreds of millions of individuals who took the vaccines worldwide.
Thank you. One moment that's going to stick with me for a long time from this last year was the date, December 16th, to be specific, that we received vaccines. It was the first day we received vaccines at KSB. And so that night we started vaccinating, frontline providers and nurses. And we had a lot of providers show up for vaccine the first day that we were vaccinating. And the energy in the room was very positive. It was really my first sense that that things were going to change and that we were on a path to beat this thing. So, Dr. Mustapha, why is vaccination so critical?
I agree with you, Luke. That day when we got the first shipment of the vaccine, it was a joyful day here at KSB. It felt as if the end of this dark tunnel is close. I am happy to inform to our community that after careful reviewing of the data about the vaccines, KSB physicians and non-physician providers almost all chose to take the vaccine in order to protect themselves, their families, and their patients. Mass vaccinations is really our strongest weapon in defeating this historic pandemic. It is our hope to go back to some form of normalcy. COVID vaccines will decrease hospitalizations and will save lives.
Thank you for that. And at this point in time, we're somewhere in the 32 to 34% ballpark of people fully vaccinated in Leogal and Whiteside counties. And our public health experts are sharing with us regularly that we need to get to about 75 to 80% to get to herd immunity. So, Dr. Mustapha, how would you explain to somebody, what is herd immunity and why is it so important?
Sure. Herd immunity occurs when a large portion of a community or a population becomes immune to an infectious disease, making the spread of this disease from person to person unlikely. As a result, the whole community will become protected. Herd immunity can either be achieved by mass vaccinations or by natural infections. It is clearly, and especially in COVID, it is safer to achieve that herd immunity through vaccinations rather than through the spread of this serious disease. For example, thanks to vaccinations, we physicians do not see paralysis from polio anymore. We do not see chickenpox, skin scars in children. Thanks to vaccination, we rarely ever hear of measles outbreaks anymore. And really, the list goes on. The vaccinations are good. They are effective. They prevent deaths. They prevent disease, like you heard, from that list I mentioned now.
Yeah, it'll be nice to get to a point here, hopefully sometime soon, where we can go to a wedding or a get together and not worry about COVID, not worry about inadvertently sharing COVID with somebody and causing them harm. So there are a lot of folks in our communities who are relatively young, relatively healthy, and of course, in their minds, and understandably, they have a relatively low risk of severe disease from COVID. And this has caused some folks, I guess, just not to seek out information about vaccination, or maybe cause them to be hesitant to, risk the side effects of the vaccine. So what would you offer to somebody, that fits that category?
Sure. And here we're talking about the young and healthy. One thing we have learned in the last year about COVID, that it is really not predictable. Although being young, although being healthy are both protective against COVID, we all have seen hospitalizations or even deaths in the young and healthy individuals. The other really good reason to get vaccinated if you are young and healthy is to protect your older and ill family members, your parents, your grandparents, your ill sibling or friend. If you are not vaccinated, you might become a vector of transmission of the virus to your loved ones and maybe put them at harm, and they will not be able to fight that virus. So get vaccinated to be able to stop the virus at you and not be a vector of transmission to someone else.
Yeah, perfect. And I think it's important for folks to understand that high-risk people, a lot of those folks have gotten vaccinated, but in certain high-risk people, vaccines just don't work real well. For instance, somebody who's getting chemotherapy, or somebody who's getting immune therapy for certain diseases. And so there's a risk of passing COVID on to somebody who's been vaccinated, who may be one of those unfortunate people in whom vaccines don't work real well. So I'm going to move on to safety. Regarding vaccine safety, we vaccinated 250 million people with Moderna and Pfizer in the U.S. So far. As vaccine providers, we report any side effects or adverse effects that are significant or unexpected. Folks who get vaccinated use a vSafe app on their phone. Via daily text, they can report their side effects or any issues they might have. And so the FDA and the CDC are monitoring safety real time. And as a matter of fact, the recent pause by the FDA and the CDC with the Johnson & Johnson and the clotting issue, I think was really insightful in how vigilant the FDA and the CDC are being around vaccine safety. So Dr. Mustapha, what would you add for folks who maybe are concerned about the safety of the vaccines?
Sure, and that's obviously those are all valid concerns. I would like to stress the fact that really COVID-19 disease is far more serious than any potential side effects from any of the COVID vaccines, that you listed up, a minute ago. When you feel slightly ill after receiving a vaccine, whether it is low-grade fever, arm soreness, joint aches, fogginess, or headache, this is considered normal. This means that the vaccine is really doing its job by activating and preparing your immune system to be able to fight the virus in the future when you get exposed. Those side effects typically are resolved in 24 to 48 hours. They would respond to hydration, some rest, maybe taking some Tylenol. On the other hand, some patients do not experience any side effect, and those are the majority actually. That does not necessarily mean that the vaccine did not generate any protective antibodies. While the COVID-19 vaccines are 80 to 95% effective, only about half of those or less will experience some form of minor side effects. As far as the risk of clots in the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, I have to stress that it is really extremely rare. It is estimated to be about 1 in a million. I'm going to make a comparison here. If a patient is ill and was ill enough from COVID-19 vaccine and gets admitted or hospitalized, the chance of that person getting a clot from COVID-19 is close to 1 in 3. Compare 1 in 3 clots in the sick patients from COVID to 1 in a million from the Johnson & Johnson vaccines. None of those potential side effects should be a reason for our community not to get vaccinated.
Perfect, thank you. So I want to jump now to vaccine effectiveness or efficacy. The initial studies with Moderna and Pfizer, the vaccine showed efficacy in the 94 to 95% neighborhood. And more recent data has continued to show efficacy better than 90%. And even in older persons, the vaccines seem to be effective at a rate much higher than even 80%. And most importantly, the vaccines are very effective at preventing hospitalization and severe COVID disease. Dr. Mustapha, what would you add to somebody that had questions around the effectiveness of the vaccines?
Sure. Like you mentioned, those vaccines are highly effective. The initial studies were done on tens of thousands of individuals, and now we have hundreds of millions of people who have received it. In the US and around the world, the rate of transmission and number of deaths are both decreasing thanks to the vaccination for COVID-19. Those vaccines have proven to be effective. They are preventing transmission rates, they are preventing hospitalizations, and they are decreasing deaths.
Perfect, thank you. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about COVID vaccine technology. The RNA vaccines, Pfizer, Moderna, are relatively new, and there were no previously marketed RNA vaccines in the United States. And this has caused a little bit of hesitancy on the part of some folks. So what would you share with anybody concerned about the newness of the vaccine technology, or maybe about how quickly the vaccines were developed and approved?
Sure, and thank you, Luke, for this important question. I hear that all the time. Regarding the speed of production of those messenger RNA vaccines, this was really a historic pandemic requiring historic efforts from pharmaceutical companies and government agencies in order to produce a vaccine in a short period of time. The messenger RNA technology was already invented several years ago. It was already being used at low scale in research. The medical technologies available nowadays, everybody knows, is way more advanced. It's more efficient compared to that used in the past decades ago to produce conventional vaccines. There were no corners cut in safety. The manufacturing process of these vaccines was just more efficient. As far as there are some patients who are concerned about the messenger RNA affecting our DNA, the RNA really never enters the nucleus of the cell, which harbors the human DNA. As such, the RNA never integrates into the DNA. It is only a code. It is only a message that our cells use to produce a single protein. After that, the messenger RNA dissolves. In other words, our body makes both the protein and the antibody against the protein. It's doing the whole job. Where in the past, it used to produce only the antibody. Those RNA vaccines are extremely safe. They are extremely effective. There are very rare incidents of reversible or treatable severe allergic reaction, like any other medication. It's more common in patients who have history of severe allergies or anaphylaxis. We are screening for those patients. If they do develop this allergic reaction, it is treatable. It's not a concern. And those patients with standard allergies, history of allergies, those should not be concerned about taking the vaccine. One other question that I hear all the time, what's the concern on the long term? I will tell them, yeah, we do have only about a year worth of data, but since we really know the mechanism of action, there is no reason to expect any long-term side effects from those vaccines.
Thank you, Dr. Mustapha. I want to talk a little bit about booster doses. I've heard some people hesitant, for the fact that we really don't know how long the vaccines work for. So admittedly, we do not know what the recommendations may be at some point for booster doses. So what would you share with somebody who has that hesitation about getting vaccinated?
Sure. Again, this hesitancy is again understandable. In the next few months, we will know if the vaccinated individuals would require a booster vaccine and how often. It is normal for some vaccines, like the flu shots, to require boosters every so often. We now know that the messenger RNA vaccines are effective for at least 6 months, maybe more. We just have to wait to get the 9 and the 12 months data. That's something we would know in the future. Will we need a booster? Would we not? It's something that we will have to wait for.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And I think that's something we can, patients can decide at that point in time. We have an opportunity by getting people vaccinated now to get to herd immunity within a few months. So hopefully we can kind of isolate that consideration, I guess, if you will. So to wrap up, I'd like to share that, very, very close to 100% of our KSP physicians and non-physician providers have been vaccinated. Out of KSP employees, we're at about 75% vaccination right now. We do pride ourselves in basing our medical decisions on the science and data, and in doing the right thing for our patients and our community. So what would you add to the why behind those numbers?
Really, I think the numbers speak loud. We, the medical staff at KSP, believe in the vaccine efficacy and its safety, and we are, like you said, close to 100% in the vaccination of the providers.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Dr. Mustapha. I want to thank you for sharing your time and your expertise. To wrap up, what are the most important things you'd like to share about COVID vaccination?
I really would like to advise our patients and community members to do their homework about the vaccines. It is our hope to go back to normal, lower our death rates, and lower the hospitalizations. KSP providers, KSP nursing staff, and pharmacists are all here available to answer any questions or concerns that you may have. And my final message is to please protect yourself, protect your family, and beat this COVID-19 virus by getting vaccinated.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you again for your time and your expertise. I would like to thank everybody and I would like to thank everybody for viewing. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your day and have a safe summer. Thank you.
Thank you.